button. So it says setting up live. I think it's usually gives me a countdown. Okay, we're good. We are live. All right, folks, let's see if this is always my favorite part. Again, I say this every week when people say, when I get to say, okay, is anybody watching? Are we live? Usually people will chime in and say if they can't hear. So let's see, let's give a few people some time. I got really beat up last week, Lou. People really were hammering me for missing, I misstated one of Bobby's song titles. I called it Spirit of the Wolf, not Sign of the Wolf. And they didn't like that. So I'm not going to try to pronounce anything hard today. So, all right, we've got some folks. Zeke Power says that the
that's my last
name. You'll always be the great Loudini to me. So,
don't try to pronounce my last name then.
Well, I won't say it. I won't say it. I've got another one. I've got one of those last names that if people just pronounce it like it's spelled, it'd be fine. But Jesus Christ, people just they try to do it differently. But whatever. Yeah. So hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Looks like we've got about a dozen people so far, and it grows throughout the deal. If you guys have ever seen a mystery collection show, you've absolutely seen the influence of my friend here, who's going to talk with us about all sorts of things today. He means a lot to me as a magician, as a mentor, and as a friend. So much so that I stole a bit directly out of his show, almost word for word, and I didn't tell him about it until he got to see me do it. It's really fun, and it's a great thing to have a friend like Lou. Lou has forgotten more about magic than 10 of me will ever know. He's performed with some of the best magicians and some of the biggest names in entertainment. How I met Lou was I got back into magic, and everybody's heard the story how I got out and got back in. And I called the number. I was working at a bank, and I called the number for a local magic club, and Lou answered, and he says, "Hey, we've got our banquet this week. You should just come to that." So I went to this banquet not knowing anybody, and then signed up for the Magic in the Rockies, which we're going to talk about a little bit. And Lou sat down with me, and after watching Aldo Colombini, Lou said, "Well, you know that guy used to perform as Fabian." And I'm like, "Well, of course I know that." And I didn't know that. I had no idea who Aldo Colombini was, but I knew that Lou was going to be a great friend, and Lou has helped me a bunch. So thanks for coming on, Lou, and kind of give a little bit about yourself and how you got to the point in magic where you are today.
Yeah, well, I just want to mention the last 4 banquets we had at different restaurants, they've all closed, and that was before the pandemic. There's the curse of the Presto Digitators when we have a banquet. You know, it was the Perkins in Loveland by Centera. There was Famous Dave's. We had a banquet there. They closed. Mimi's, they're gone. When we have a banquet, and I don't know, next time we will, it's the kiss of death for the restaurant.
Well,
they
I think
go out
the
of
one
business, or they move, or whatever. It's amazing.
The one before that had the curse of the flea circus, I think, right?
Yes, that was at the steak place out on Mulberry.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So
The never-ending flea circus by our good friend Richard Nakata. He's a wonderful magician, but anything that could go wrong that night went wrong with his flea circus.
Yes. I've mentioned Rich on here.
How did I get involved in magic? Well, no, I'm from New Jersey. I don't know what exit. I get the joke. When I finally got to see Siegfried and Roy years ago, well, my wife is 70 now. It was her 50th birthday. We were in Vegas. Siegfried is doing the effect where the tiger ends up behind the lady, and he's doing the rope trick. And he says to the front row, "Where are you from?" And she goes, "New Jersey." He goes, "What exit?" A comedy club joke by Siegfried. Right. It's not funny now. It wasn't funny then. But I grew up in New Jersey, and for a while we lived in the suburbs. We were doing well, and then on his 5th heart attack, my father passed away when I was about 9.5 years old. And eventually we moved to Newark, and it's not Newark then. It was okay. It was the Weequahic section, and you can look it up in Philip Roth books. It was a heavy Jewish section of New Jersey. I went to Maple Avenue School and eventually to Weequahic High School. Al Attles, the famous basketball player, went there too. I didn't know him either. But when I was about 9.5, 10 years old, or maybe 10 or 11, there was a kid down the block that was having a birthday party. And he said, you're invited to my birthday party, and we're having a magician. Magician's name was Jack Sandors. He was a very famous magician. I think he was a liquor salesman too in New Jersey. And I went down the block to Myron Lowenstein's house and saw this magician. And afterward, Myron said, you know, I'm interested in magic. Do you have any interest? I said, you know, I don't know. Why? He said, there's a magic shop in East Orange, New Jersey called Mecca Magic, owned by Professor Ted Collins. He's in the Tarbell Book of Magic for the Panama rope trick. And I said, all right. He said, my mother could take us there, or your mother could drive us there. And we went to Mecca Magic and became part of the Mecca Magic Magic Club and started doing magic when I was 10, 10 and a half. And then we got bold. We started taking 2 buses. We took the bus downtown to Newark and took the 21 Orange and told the driver, make sure you tell us when South Harrison Street comes up. And he would yell it out when we would get out and visit Mecca Magic. So I was performing in the basement of the 2-family house in Newark and starting to do shows and got very interested in magic. One thing I found out when I had moved from South Orange to Newark after my dad passed away, there were no dead fathers or no divorced kids. So whenever anyone would introduce me as the new kid, they take the person aside and say, don't say anything about his father. His father's dead. Now you're in a class and it's like half the class, parents are broken up, whatever, you know, it's no big deal. Then it was a big deal. So, and as a result, no one will believe it, but I was pretty introverted because I couldn't handle that. You know, it was like, oh, don't say anything about his father. His father's dead. So when I got into magic, I found out I could say, pick a card. And I could cover that I was introverted by, you know, pretending to be an extrovert, which I still do. And the medium of magic allowed me to relate to audiences, whether it was on a stage at a church in East Orange through the club show or wherever, you know, I was able to stand and do magic or start acquiring props. I'm a prop junkie. And then when we were about 15, Myron said, there's this place in New York, Tannins. It was then owned by Lou Tannin, not the Tannins that had ups and downs over the year. It was in an office building. You had to get there and take an elevator up, and you walked out and you were in this room. It was Tannins. And, you know, Frank Garcia was there and Richard Himber was there and just all these magicians that I'd heard about. And we would take the bus into Tannins. And so those were my 2 magic shops growing up. Continued to do magic. And then sort of it waned as I got older and got a driver's license, and all my friends, me being a little older than them, jumped into my mother's car and I was the driver. And we'd carry on and drive to New York, where you could drink at 18, or you couldn't drink in New Jersey until 21. And we'd go to upstate New York and of course the Jersey Shore. And then through college, 5 years through various colleges, ending up at the University of Miami. And I dropped magic. And I got back to Jersey in 69, and I was going to go to graduate school, which I did. And a friend of mine called and said, we're having a Halloween party with all the guys you know and the gals you know. Do you still have any of those magic tricks? Could you do a magic show? And my friend Sherry, I said, I don't know. I gave them all to this guy, Myron. I haven't talked to him in years. And I called Myron. It turned out he was working at Mecca Magic. Most of my stuff that I gave him was lost in a flood in his basement. He said, well, come down to Mecca Magic and you can buy some more props and get back into magic. And eventually Myron opened Mystic Myron's Magic Mart, strangely enough, in South Orange for a couple of years. I helped him open and close that. But that got me into magic, and I needed a name. You know, it's Lou Weimissner, the magician, didn't make it. So as many magicians do, Houdini did it. He took Jean Robert Houdin's last name, became Houdini, although Houdin's widow didn't like that because he didn't get approval for that. So my first name is spelled Lewis. I'm named after my grandfather on my father's side, who was Louis. I never met him. But when I was born, my father said to my mother, I'd like to name him after my father, which in the Jewish tradition, you don't do with a living person. So my mother, who was not English, she was born in Nutley, New Jersey. My father was born in Austria. She said, yes, but we're going to spell it Lewis. That's sort of like the British spelling. So my name is Lewis, but I adopted Loudini, Loudini. Now I find out over the years, there was a psychic in Denver, Loudini. I'm sure she was good, but I don't know how much of a psychic she was if she didn't know that there was a Loudini 60 miles away in Fort Collins.
Right, right.
There was a dentist in Minnesota, Loudini. There was some other kid, Loudini. So I went to a friend of mine, a lawyer, and I said, I don't want to, trademark this, but I just want to be protected. And he charged me a nominal sum and said, how long have you had that name? And have you any proof? And I had some proof. In fact, it was a playbill from the Embarcadero in San Francisco when I was out there on a quick tour in 1982. And I had friends that knew me in Jersey and in Colorado as Loudini. And he said, if you ever question about it, I said, I just don't want to lose the name. I'm not going to fight anyone for it. But it's not happened. But and people look at it Loudini, and they see loud, and they call Loudini. And in fact, there was a guy in town. He ended up being a taxi driver. He's since moved. Steve, I forget his last name. He used to call me Mark all the time. I said, let me ask you a question. Why do you call me Mark? Well, I thought your name was Mark Loudini. I said, no, it's not. So it's the Great Loudini. It's my website, and it's been an avocation. In the last year, it's been nothing, but it's been an avocation where I had the day job. Just walked into it in 1978 at the what ended up being the Workforce Center through the old CETA program, and said, I'm looking for a job, and they actually had a job as an employment counselor there. I said, I'll try that for the $749 a month, no benefits for Larimer County. And 34 years later, I retired as the assistant director. So you never know. Sometimes you end up doing what you don't know you're going to be doing. And that gave me a high profile in town, at least until 2014 when I retired, because I would talk to the media all the time about statistics that I knew nothing about. I would just parrot stuff every month about the unemployment stats, and they'd call me, this just came over the wire. What are your views on this economic thing? Well, who else is talking about it? Well, the Economic Development Corp said this. I agree with them 100%. And people say, why is your name always in the paper? I said, what follows it? What follows my name? It says Assistant Director at Larimer County Workforce Center. So people know my job is to promote our agency, not myself. But when I retired, I've forgotten her name. She's still at the Colorado, and she came over with her iPhone. She said, we know who else you are. And I did a trick for them on her iPhone, and they put it on the Colorado website, talking about me retiring. So, but it's been, a kick, except not this last year, not for many magicians I know. Some magicians have transferred to become Zoom magicians. That's okay. I have my own views about that, and we can talk about that. But I'm going to wait it out to do live magic shows again. And my age, I just recently, I'm 3 weeks out of my second shot. So if the vaccine works, I'd maybe be able to start doing shows in the summer again, because I miss live audiences. I'm not sure what psychologist Abraham Maslow talked about peak experiences. Not every show I've done was a peak experience, but a lot of them were. And you do shows, how you feel when people, I try to allow them to understand, if they ask me, I'm like a catcher on a baseball team. I'm not doing stuff to them. I'm part of the team, except I get to face them. And my show is the audience. I don't mean that facetiously, all the different reactions. And someone once said to me, you know, you've been doing the same tricks for years. Why do you do the same tricks? I said, I have a secret. I change audiences.
Yep.
Okay. So, you know, I've added stuff recently, but it's a kick. And if you have a hobby, it can end up costing a lot of money in props, or if you're not a prop junkie, whatever, and you don't enjoy it, you're not having fun, don't do it. Supposedly, you know, in his biography, I think it was, someone once said Billy Crystal used to vomit every time before he'd go on stage. And, you know, Billy Crystal's one of the greatest. But I have hardly ever felt nervous before a show. I just do that Bob Fosse thing from the movie Showtime, and I'm ready to go. And I've had back spasms, and when I was performing, there were no back spasms. I don't know if it was the same stuff that runners get, whatever it's called. You know, for the 30, 45 minutes, I'm in a different place most of the time. There have also been some very memorable, forgettable shows.
Well, that's what I want to talk about. I want to
forgettable shows, and if you don't have those,
yeah, I want to talk about some of those. I mean, you've
that's how I got into magic, and then
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. There's the delay. So say, you know,
yeah, there's a little bit of a delay.
Ask me any questions you
want. Sorry about that. There seems to be a little bit more of a delay than usual, but I want to talk about, you mentioned some of the highs and some of the lows. I've seen you open for country music star, was it Sarah Evans? And that was kind of you got a call a half hour before to do that, but you also performed. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a callback. The gentleman who was running the Civic Center in your town in Greeley used to be the assistant director at Lincoln Center, and I'm spacing his name right now. It's not Jason Evenson, it's somebody else. Yeah. And no, this was not Jason. No, this was
Mark,
the fellow before that. He was second in command at the Lincoln Center. Mark Brimehorst, thank you. And a good friend of mine, who's one of the best magicians in the country, his name is Eric Meade. I know him since he's 14. He does mostly corporate magic now, and he lives up in Basalt. He, for years, worked with Doc Eason at the Tower Bar doing magic. The Tower was owned by John Denver. Eric's now, I think, 55. That's how long I know him. We were going to see the Temptations. Well, there were one or two Temptations and three guys younger than me at the time, but they were the Temptations for real. And there was a restaurant, and that escapes my name now because it's changed over the years, across from the Lincoln Center. And I was sitting there, and the reason we had tickets, my good friend who since passed away, Tim Mulcahy, and his wife Kathy, they had tickets, but it was icy out, and she had an auto accident. And he called me and said, "Do you want to go see the Temptations? No charge." Eric said, "I'm not paying." Okay, we went for free. I'll take you to a restaurant beforehand. We're sitting in his restaurant, and there's three guys sitting talking to Mark. And they looked like Jewish managers. Okay. And Mark was saying, well, what would it take for them to go on early? And I'm eavesdropping on this conversation. He said, well, another $10,000. And Mark is freaking out. And I got the gist of it. And I said to Eric, let's go over to Lincoln Center. I think we're going to open for the Temptations. He goes, what are you talking about? So Mark is walking back and forth in the lobby. I said, you got a problem? He said, yeah, the Nacho Men are supposed to open for the Temptations, and the lead singer is iced out in Denver. He's not going to be here. I said, do you need an opening act? I said, yeah, Eric, you guys would do something? You would do it? I said, yeah, I'd have to run home, which is 5 blocks away, get some props. Okay, if the guy shows up, would you get off stage? I said, of course. And we opened for Temptation. But I learned something from one of the worst shows I ever did in San Jose. And that was back in 1982. When they were in town, there was a group called the Amazing Rhythm Aces, and its lead singer was Russell Smith. Unfortunately, about a year or so ago, he passed away. A lot of songs, and a lot of people cover his songs. And their manager was Mike Barnett, who was a friend of mine, Jerry Weintraub, who used to own the Mellow Yellow, and he introduced me to Mike. And Mike said, "Hey, you do magic, and we got a lot of props on stage, mic stands or whatever. You want to open for the Aces at the Lincoln Center?" I went, "Yeah, I'll do that." So I opened and did okay. And then afterward, got to meet everybody. And Mike said, "This is 1982. We're going on a tour soon. It's not going to, well, actually, I opened for the Aces a couple of times. It's not going to be the Aces, someone left the group. It's going to be Russell Smith and Levon Helm from the band. And we're going to be in the Roxy Theater in LA, and then the Embarcadero in San Francisco, and then a place in San Jose. Do you want to fly out there and open for us? We're not going to give you a lot of money." I said, "I've never been to California. I'll take off work. I'll do it." So I went out there and I opened at the Roxy. I got an ashtray from the Roxy in the Embarcadero in San Francisco, and those shows went well. And then there was San Jose. I didn't know what sushi was. I get there and the roadie said, "They're all out having sushi, and KFAT's going to simulcast this on radio, not your magic show. So you're supposed to go on at 8. They're supposed to go on at 8:30. They're not going to be here till after 9. You got to go on and stretch." I'm like, "Stretch? What are you talking about?" So I get on in this bar called Sam's, not the one in Fort Collins. And I start my show, and I know your show allows this, and this is a quote. There's a woman way in back of the bar, and she said it 10 times at the top of her voice, "Get the fuck off the stage." She said it again and again. They were not there to see me. And I'm taking up time for the Muscle Shoals All-Stars and Levon Helm and Russell Smith. She said it 10 times. "Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much." And the strange thing is, I just started ad-libbing, and the roadie says to me, "Stretch." I'm like, I'm dying up here. I'm dying. And there were a couple of guys sitting in front, heavy-set guys with cowboy hats. And I have an effect where I cut the rope and I throw it out in the audience. But this is back in '82. What was strange to me was there was a condom machine in the bathroom. Why that struck me strange is I hadn't seen it in any bathroom since I was at the University of Miami in 66 through 69. And I made a joke. I said, "Oh, it's a condom machine in your bathroom. I haven't seen that since 1969, University of Miami." And one of the 3 guys sitting in front, "We figured you was a Jew from back east." And I'm like, "Oh, this is it." So I throw the rope out and I said to the roadie, "Let me know if they turn that into a noose, okay?" And this woman in the back is still yelling the same epithet. "Get the fuck off the stage." I finally finished my show, go down off the stage, walk into the bathroom, and these 3 guys that even my size now make me look thin, walk in and follow me into the bathroom. I was never a fighter. I was always a talker. But I turn around and I go, "What?" They said, "We just want to tell you, we gave you everything we could, and you gave it back to us. We really like you." And I was like, "Oh, they're not going to kill me. Okay." I said, "That's a strange way to tell me that you like me." And I went out. So remembering that, when I opened for the Temptations, I said, San Jose. I came out on stage. "Hey, it's Lou. Hey, it's Lou. What are you doing out there on stage, Lou?" I said, "Oh, we're all here to see the Temptations and the Nacho Men." "Yeah." Sell out at the Lincoln Center. Except the Nacho Men aren't here. They're iced in Denver. "Oh, and here's the deal. My friend Eric and I can do some stuff for you for the next half hour. Or the Temptations, it's now 7:30. They're not going to come out until 8:30, no matter how much you yell and scream. So you can sit there for the next half hour or so with nothing, or we can do some magic." "Oh, do some magic for us, Lou." And we round robin doing some magic for about half an hour, and someone wrote a review. And we don't know why LOUDINI and Eric opened for the Temptations. And someone was a saxophonist, what was his name? Real nice guy. He said, "You can put that on your resume, though. You opened for the Temptations." So years later, I used to do shows at the jail around Christmas time when I worked for the county. And that was another experience, all the shows I did at the jail. And my friend Mel Lamar from Greeley is a juggler and a magician and a ventriloquist, and he would do more of a gospel show for the people in jail. And we'd usually split after that, and he'd go home, and afterward he said, "Hey, you want to go out for some nachos?" I said, "Sure." We're out having nachos. Let me check my voicemail. And 20 years later, Mark Brimore said, "Lou, can you help me out? Sarah Evans." I don't know who Sarah Evans is. Apparently she was on Dancing with the Stars. She's a country western singer. "Sarah Evans missed her plane. Can you come over to the Union Colony Civic Center and open like you did for the Temptations?" I said, "Mel, you want to do a show with me at the Union Colony Civic Center then before you go home?" He said, "Yeah, let's do that." So I go out there, and they had two DJs announcing. "Oh, we know you. You're the comedian." "Yeah, I'm a comedian." I said, "You're going to go out and announce this. Here's what you're going to say. Sarah Evans missed her plane. We do have an opening act. They're not going to take any time from Sarah Evans. And when she gets here, she's going to do her entire show." Because I didn't want San Jose, even though they wouldn't have yelled at in Greeley. So I do the show with Mel. We left. I went by her dressing room. I saw her high heels. She wasn't there yet. I never got to meet Sarah Evans. And the next day I get a call from this Paul Knopfsinger. "I didn't know you were opening for Sarah Evans. I didn't know you were in the audience." I said, "I didn't know I was opening for Sarah Evans." So that's on the resume, okay? Russell Smith, Levon Helm. And then my friends Cody and Eric, before Eric left town for Snowmass and Basalt, we had a group called Funny Business with magic and juggling. And one night we opened at Panama Reds in Fort Collins for Leon Redbone.
Wow.
We finished opening. We left. He came in through the back from the parking lot. We never met him, but I opened for Leon Redbone. Who else did I say I opened for? Let me see. One I just remembered, but yeah, I could say I opened for Sarah Evans, The Temptations, Leon Redbone, Russell Smith, and Levon Helm, both with the Amazing Races and the Muscle Shoals All-Stars. I can say I performed at the Magic Castle. Maybe 35 years ago, I was out there with Eric when he was a teenager. He said, "Why don't you come out with me and we'll have a good time and you can audition. If I ever come out again, you could perform at the Magic Castle." And I didn't audition there, and I didn't know that the one guy who ran the thing at the time was named Don Costco. He was a guy with the red jacket. They ran the booking, and he was a magic clown with power. And there were other magicians in the audience at the it was not the close-up room, and it was not the stage. I think it's called the parlor. I don't remember. And everyone liked me, all the other magicians, but he got the final vote. And he said, "I got to go talk to you. We're going to the restaurant." He said, "You know, if I approve you to come out here again," I wasn't going to come out there again. Maybe if Eric went out or someone I knew, I'd go do a week. "But your stuff is just, too commonplace. So here, sign this that you can't perform here anymore." I went, "Okay." "Well, what do you mean my stuff is commonplace?" "Well, we had a guy one time, he did a torn and restored newspaper, and when it was restored, it had all duct tape on it." From the Carol Fox book?" "Oh, that was Carol Fox's routine?" I said, "Yeah, I'll be glad to sign that."
Right.
So that was my stint where I can say I performed at the Magic Castle. And when I was at the Workforce Center, people around the state at the state conferences, I'd do some magic, or people would come and visit our program. Then we'd take them out to a dinner. I'd do some magic. And we had AmeriCorps Youth Corps when it started. And they said, "We're going to have all the AmeriCorps Youth Corps from around the state." It's been like 2 or 3 years we've had AmeriCorps. They're all going to meet at Red Rocks for lunch. And we want people from the workforce centers to come down. By the way, during their luncheon, while they're sitting in the stands, 750 of them, "Could you do a little magic?" I said, "You mean I could stand on the stage at Red Rocks where Jimmy Buffett stood and Bruce Springsteen?" "Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. I've performed at Red Rocks."
There you go. There you go.
I was standing on the stage. I said, "I had occasion to perform at Red Rocks, had occasion to perform at the Magic Castle." To finish the Magic Castle story, someone you know, and we can talk about magic in the Rockies, but before our club took it over, it started first back in the late 70s, early 80s in Estes Park as a magic convention with magicians. Then it went away for a few years. Then it came back in Denver. and I was at the Magic in the Rockies that Steve Aldridge reclaimed in Denver. And I was telling this story about the Magic Castle, how I got booted. And before that, there was an open mic. It was a Friday night, and I did a set at the open mic. And this tall guy walked up to me and said, "I just saw you perform. Don't ever think you couldn't perform at the Magic Castle." I said, "That's fine. Who are you?" He said, "My name is David Williamson. Eric can't be here this weekend. He told me to hang out with you." I went, "Nice to meet you, David Williamson." And he's, you know, he's a friend. I don't see him a lot, but David and I.
And arguably one of the funniest guys in Magic. One of the absolute funniest guys in Magic, David Williamson.
One of the funny. We had him several. We had him several times at Magic in the Rockies, and I've seen him at Magic Live, and we talk. He's a great guy, very funny, and a great magician. But I said, "And who are you?" He said, "I'm David Williamson. Eric Meade couldn't make it to the convention. He told me I should look you up and hang out with you this weekend." I went, I'm with you, bud." So, you know, there've been some other shows. There was a show back in Jersey once for my friend when he was managing shoe stores, and they had a totally open bar. It's like, it was a horror show. And there was a show for a automotive dealer in Greeley. I'm not going to mention the name, at one of the conference centers. And the open bar was supposed to be an hour. It was open for 3 hours. And the people were passing out. And I'm doing my show, and the owner's wife said, they turned on the lights for the riser stage. He goes, "Those lights hurt my eyes. I don't want those lights on." I said to the owner, I said, "Look, without the lights, I can't do any magic." And these people were drunk as skunks. And I have an effect where I have a balloon where I stick a sword through it, it breaks, I put it through someone's neck. I'm glossing over it. And if it's an adult, you know, audience, I'll say, "Oh, I don't have any more balloons," which is, of course not, because it's not supposed to happen. "Does anyone have any balloons?" And the guy in the front row took out a big rubber and threw it up on the stage. They were so drunk. And I think they had some liability there. But the next year, the booker called me and said, "They want you to do another show." I said, "No effing way." "Whoa, why?" I said, "Because I would never do a show for those folks again, because I don't have to. I can say no." "Well, we have this Cub Scout thing, and there are going to be 300 Cub Scouts, and all the adults are going to be in the other room having a meeting, and you could no." No.
We want to hire you to babysit
adults
these Boy Scouts.
Supervising the Cub Scouts while I'm doing the show. No. And we want you to do 3 hours of walk around. Let me refer you to a friend of mine. "Don't you do close-up magic?" "Yeah, but I'm not going to stand around for 3 hours." "We want you to do a walk around before our dinner, and then after dinner, you'll do a show." "No, I'll price it out if you want that." "Why?" "Because I have to wait for you folks to have dinner. It's my time. This is an avocation. I'll be glad to pep up the crowd after their dinner and do a show for you. That's what I'm good at." So I could pick and choose because I can say no. Yeah, and I sometimes didn't even make up an excuse. Why?
Right.
It's not the kind of show I want to do. Or in the case of that with the booker, I said, "Those people are drunken slobs. I would never do another show for them. They don't want magic. They want an open bar." It's like, and you know, I also get calls, and you do too. "Oh, you're a magician." They don't want you. They want a price. They call and say, "I want Paul Knopfsinger. I've seen you. I want the great LOUDINI. I've seen you." My problem is I get a call, "Yeah, I'd like to have you do a show for our son's graduation in high school." "You know why we're calling you?" "No, why?" "Because you did my graduation." "Oh, okay." I was at an event for the food bank once. I was at an event for the food bank at where they had that big food fest, and a guy comes up to me, "I know you. You're a magician." This guy's about 40 years old. I said, "How do you know me?" "You did my 8th birthday party." I went, "Okay, thanks. I'm glad you recognized me after all these years." Because I've been in town 41 years now. So, but the hobby's been great. And for a while, my friend Cody and I taught magic through a program called Enrichment in the Fort. It would be Super Saturdays. For 5 Saturdays, we teach 2 Saturdays of magic to 9, 10, 11-year-olds, 2 Saturdays of juggling, and then Cody would have them do a show for the rest of the kids in the enrichment program. They were 9, 10, 11-year-olds. I got people in their 40s coming up to me. I still got the ropes. Okay, well, who are you? Well, I was in your class. I was 9. Okay, you're 40 now. Okay. To that end, actually, you know, Cody, who is a great performer, musician, magician, juggler, the pandemic, he usually does 80 to 100 library shows in 5 states in the summers. And that was canceled last year, and he's not going to do it this year. He's come up with a friend of his, Wolf, who's a performer in Phoenix, a lifelong friend. They're selling programs to libraries, and actually anyone can buy it. But the libraries that buy these programs, they're on video. They're 6 different courses in teaching magic and juggling. And he's developed these videos. You can go on Amazon and buy a trick, and then you get it. Or if it's a parent, they buy their son or daughter a magic set, and the kid goes, "Show me how to do this." And the parent goes, "I don't know how to do it." And there aren't many more brick and mortar magic shops around. And if they are, sometimes they just try to sell things to people, other than the people we know who are in magic businesses where we can trust what we're buying. So Cody's got this thing called yourmagiclibrary.com. Individuals can buy the course. It's not cheap, but it's one-on-one videos teaching magic and juggling, and they're going to have follow-ups to it too. Or people can rely on the 14-year-olds that expose magic on YouTube.
Right.
You know, that they get their 15 minutes of fame and they expose magic, and oh, great. But I found it to be a great hobby. You know, it's had me meet people I would have never met, had me gone places I would have never gone. And the Magic in the Rockies convention that we took over for 20 years, this is the list, you can't see it, of headliners we had over 20 years. And I've seen some of them have passed away, some of these people, and they're not household names to the average person, but they're household names in magic. And some of them are still my friends that I only met because they came once, twice, or 3 times as headliners to Magic in the Rockies.
Well, I want to interrupt you on that.
Some of the greatest names in magic were in Fort.
I want to interrupt you on that. I've been lucky enough to travel with you to several conventions. We've gone to, I don't know how many Magic Lives we've gone to together, and a couple of my inventions. And it's always, I don't know how to describe it. It's always a circus from the minute one of us almost falls down the escalator to the time that we get sippy cups on the airplane because they're afraid we're going to spill.
I fell up.
Oh, right.
I actually fell up the escalator.
Right. But it's fun because
I was looking for you at the
I read tons of magic books, and I watch these videos, and I hear these people, and I see their shows, and walking around a magic convention with Lou is it's unbelievable. I mean, you have people like Michael Weber, again, not a name to people that most of the people that are watching, but to magicians, Michael Weber is a big deal. And he comes up and he says, "Lou, how are you doing?" And these other ones, and the story that I want to tell is Lou is known as a couple of my friends have known. I've been working on a Clue routine for years. I've been working on an idea of doing something with the game Clue for years. And I had I thought I had a really good idea, and I was working on it. And Lou and I are standing in line at Magic Live in Las Vegas, which is is it 1,500 people, 2,000 people go to that? It's a huge convention. And Barry Richardson is standing a couple people in front of us. And Barry Richardson is a really big deal. And Lou says, "Well, you ought to ask Barry about this." And I'm like, I'm not going to bother Barry with this. I mean, Barry Richardson has written three of the big books in the kind of magic we do. And Lou says, no, hey, Barry. And so he brings Barry Richardson over, and he says, "Paul's got an idea here that I think that you might you could help him out with." And I don't know if it was Lou getting rid of me for a little bit, or if it was, so I told Barry the idea, and Barry says, "That's a really good idea. Can I get back with you on that?" And I thought, yeah, that's nice. And sure as shit, the next day I see him, and he's got a page and a half of notes, and he says, "Do you got a few minutes?" And he gave me any friend of Lou's, is I'll help and do whatever I can. So And that's what it's like every time you go somewhere with
Well,
Lou.
Barry unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He was an educator, a professor in college, and I didn't know I knew the name. And Eric Meade, who, along with Doc Easton, used to get a lot of our headliners, said, "We got to get this guy Barry Richardson. You know him, but you don't know him. You used to get that small magazine called Pabular when your friend Myron, who's still my friend, Myron and I, we have spats, but we talk about it once a day. He's still in New Jersey. When Myron had the story of that Pabular magazine that Barry used to write for Pabular, I said, well, who's Barry Richardson? Well, Michael Weber is trained to be a lawyer. He's one of the most brilliant magicians in the world. And he's a nice guy too. And I kind of met Michael through Eric. He said, if we get Barry Richardson at Magic in the Rockies, Michael Weber will come because he has to talk over a few things with him. I went, oh, that's who Barry Richardson is. Michael Weber goes to Barry Richardson for advice? Wow. So Barry Richardson came to our convention. He goes, you know, guys, I'm older now. The book's coming out. I don't think I can come back to any more of these conventions. And except for 1 year, he came back every year.
Right,
just to
right.
hang out. What a lovely man he was too. And brilliant. And
Well, and I saw him a couple years later.
No, I mean, I got to meet a lot of, well,
I saw him a couple years later and I had him sign his book, and he remembered the clue routine and he remembered that I was your friend, and he signed the book. I'm glad we're friends, Paul. And I thought, wow, that, you know, I mean, that is he was one of a rare breed for sure.
You know, it also proved to me how singularly focused some magicians are. He was talking about, we had him do 15-minute TED type things at Magic in the Rockies. And he was talking about one time when he was doing a talk somewhere, and, you know, then he got to hang out with someone who was in the other room talking, Robert Frost.
Right.
And I said, he hung out with Robert. And some of the magicians went, who's Robert Frost?
Right.
I said, well, I don't know if you're old enough to remember JFK. He was supposed to read a poem at JFK's inaugural, but the sun was in his eyes, and he couldn't read his poem. So he extemporaneously recited another poem he had. And these guys are going, who's Robert Frost? I'm like, you guys got to do more than magic.
Yep.
You know, it's like, come on. This guy was hanging out with Robert Frost. Right. Oh, yeah, who's Robert Frost?
Right, okay. Right. So let's talk a little bit about Magic in the Rockies.
That happened to me. Yeah. Well, Steve Aldridge took it back after starting it in Estes Park for a few years. Then it went to Cramion, then it went to hell, basically. And Dan Rodriguez picked it up as Magic Days, and had one-day conventions in Denver. And then Steve Aldridge took it back and had two-day conventions. And he came to our club and he said, I'm not doing it anymore. Do the Presto Digitators in Fort Collins want to take over the convention? And we thought about it, and we did. We took it back to Estes Park for 3 years, which was fun, but logistically, they don't want multi-day conventions at the Crags Lodge or later on at the Holiday Inn. And they said, well, we can't give you those dates in October anymore. We can give you a date in February. You're going to have people come in from all over the country to go to Estes Park in February. No. So we moved it after 3 years to the Marriott in Fort Collins, which it was for the rest of the time. The only thing that we were able to do for a number of years up until the end was have our public show at the Lincoln Center on the full stage at the Performance Hall. And we would, part of the ticket price to come to Magic in the Rockies, you get a seat in the Lincoln Center. We'd sell tickets to the general public to try to make ends meet for, you know, putting on the convention. And people would come to the show and they had no idea who these people were. Tommy Wonder, Max Maven, Aldo Colombini. Oh, that was a good show, Lou, this year. One guy said to me, yeah, I liked the show better last year. These are one-time shows with some of the greatest magicians in the world. Gaetan Bloom from France. Kevin James, not the comedian, the guy that saws the guy in half and the top half of his body runs around the audience. He was the list of names of headliners is incredible. And these public shows were once a year. And people go, oh yeah, that was nice. The rehearsal started at 5 o'clock. The show went off at 7:30.
Yep.
It was like crazy. And finally, after years and years, 20 years worth, we had burned out, had enough. We used to lose money, but I would get money from the private sector as sponsors, and I'd get money from the city of Fort Collins from Fort Fund because we were bringing people into town. The money from the private sector was not for Magic in the Rockies. It was an idea I had since I performed as young as 10 years old. I started something called Kids Performing for Kids. We'd have kids from around the state and even outside the state audition by videotape. And if we approved them for Kids Performing for Kids so they wouldn't embarrass themselves on the performance hall of the Lincoln Center, they'd get free registration in a room with an adult, probably one of their parents, at the convention. And the Thursday before, we actually backed it up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Friday before the convention actually started, Thursday was like a free day for magicians, and we had a lot of dealers selling magic. Anyone could come to the Thursday. And Friday afternoon, the convention started. But Friday morning, I had this idea where through the Poudre School District, we bust in up to 900 kids in elementary school. And my rationale was, if they see a magic show and they see kids their age doing magic on stage, they're not going to run out and become magicians, but maybe they can come up with a hobby. We had a fellow, Dr. Ron Dutton, who's since passed away, psychologist, came up with a booklet that every kid got, how to watch a magic show. And most of the time, who was our MC? Steve Spangler, Mr. Science from Channel 9, who's also a magician. And he would MC it, and he would give free science stuff to all the kids that came. So the kids in the audience got to see a magic show with kids their age.
Well, and some of the
kids in
kids
the show got to perform on a real stage.
And some of the kids that performed on that went on to be, you had of course Derek McKee and Adam Trent, who now is
Adam Trent. Worldwide, Derek McKee. There's a fellow in Denver who's in his 20s now doing virtual shows with a lot of high-tech stuff. Max Davidson. There's a guy from Nebraska, Chase Hasty. He's still doing it.
Yep.
But even the kids that didn't go on to perform magic got the feeling. One year, John Stetson, who you know from the Boston area, was our backstage manager. And the kids had to show up. The show went off at 10. The kids had to show up for tech rehearsal at 7:30 at the Lincoln Center. We had to do a run through. They had never been on a stage that size, and the place was going to be full. And the parents were there. And the parents are all on stage. And if those who don't know John Stetson, good friend of mine, Stetson said, "Oh, are any of you parents in your kids' acts?" They said, "No." He said, "Then get off the stage." They went, "Oh, go sit down. We have a show to put on. Kids, stop fooling around. We got to run through this. We got a show to put on. We want it to be good." They were learning stage management too. Not just go out and perform, but what it takes to put on a full show. So the Kids Performing for Kids was my ticket to the private sector, to the bank presidents, to the car dealers. "Oh, Lou, here's money for the kids. We like what you're doing." So we were able to pay our bills and sometimes break even through the sponsorship. Then in the program that people got Saturday night, it had all the sponsors listed. And the MCs would say, "Oh, by the way, when you see these people around town, thank them for helping us put on Magic in the Rockies." And we also used to do promotions for a while down in Old Town. We had a guy come in, a friend of Stetson's from Wisconsin, and I called the guy that had a sign company, and he said, "I'll do it for you, Lou." And he brought over one of his derricks. And the guy in a straitjacket was hoisted upside down like 100 feet over Old Town. And he got out of the straitjacket. We had TV stations there. Another guy one time got out of a milk can filled with water. We had all 3 TV stations there from Denver. And that was to promote Magic in the Rockies tickets. When we had the guy in the straitjacket, I said, I got to make this look good. So I called the EMTs. I said, I'm going to ask you a favor. We have insurance, and it's going to be safe. But he said, what are you talking about? A guy upside down on a crane. Well, he's going to be in a straitjacket. My name's Lou Wymister. Aren't you the great Loudini? I said, yeah. Okay, we'll be there with the ambulance. They had an ambulance with a light on Walnut Street while he's doing this. It was like promote, you know. So the convention, as hard as it was to put on every year, thanks to the efforts of Tim Pendergast, Ed Hurtubise, a slew of people, Cody Landstrom, Dave Miller, a coterie of people that helped us put it on. People would show up for the weekend. Oh, that was nice. We'd work on it all year. It was draining. And the last couple of years, we were able to pay our bills, but we depleted the sponsorship money. Actually, there's a woman who liked our club and liked what we did for kids, and a friend of hers was in on the estate, and she called me and said, I think she left you guys money for Magic in the Rockies for the kids. I said, oh, that would be great. He says, I'm going to the estate thing, and I'll let you know. And she called me and said, yeah, she left you guys $10,000. And that we were able to put on the convention that year, and we had more kids performing for kids. And then one year, and you were part of it, I had a GoFundMe with people. I said, you give me $1,000. There's no guarantee you'll ever get it back. We may not have another Magic in the Rockies again. If we do, you get free registration. And you were one of 11 people that coughed up $1,000. We went through that the same year we went through the 10,000. So it was costing us money. The registrations were down. Oh, I'll come next year. Well, there is no next year. And even the school said, you know, it's a real hassle. Even though you pay for the school buses, it's a real hassle to get these kids out of class, blah, blah, blah. We don't know if we want to do it anymore. I was like, you know what? We had a good time, 20 years. And people still ask, oh, you ever going to do another, you know? And someone once said, Magic Live said, I really missed the convention. I looked at him, I said, well, that makes one of us.
Right.
It's like, it was a lot of work. But as a result, I got to meet a shitload of people that I would have never met. I still get to see some of them. I don't know how many conventions in Vegas I'm going to go to anymore. Some of the greats that I got to meet have passed away. I would have never met them. They headline Magic in the Rockies. We got to bring Magic to town one weekend a year. Johnny Thompson, one of the greatest magicians I'll have ever met in my life. He was a character. He just passed away a couple of years ago. He had stories and stories and stories. And once he came 3 times to Magic in the Rockies. It used to be Johnny and Pam. It was the great Thompsoni. Then she had some problems as she got older with her feet. They split up the act. One of the greatest magicians in the world. I got to say he was a friend. I'd see him in Vegas. He'd be in the middle of a lecture. He'd go, oh, there's Lou. You guys ought to know about Magic in the Rockies. He'd come out and give me a hug. And people go,
I was there. I was there for one of those when he talked about Magic in the Rockies in the middle of his show. He stopped a show and talked about Magic in the Rockies when he saw you.
Yeah, Johnny was great. I first saw him on Ed Sullivan.
Wow.
Before that, he was a harmonica player in the Harmonicats. He was a character in the Chicago Bozo show. He was Claude Hopper. He told us these stories. He started in a circus and the sideshows. He lived into his 80s, and as a magician, it was beyond compare. Whether he was doing stand-up, close-up, whatever. In his knowledge, one of the greatest magicians in the world. Got to meet him and become friends with him. It's amazing. In fact, I just told you a story I heard about recently. A good friend of his was another great magician, a younger guy, Paul Vigil. And I don't know if Eric wanted me to tell this story to everybody, but it's no big deal. Johnny he used to imbibe in the weed, okay? And he and Paul were flying to Toronto. And they can't take anything into Canada with them. So Paul said, well, we'll get these edibles. This is a little while ago. And Paul was sitting in coach and Johnny was sitting in first class. And Paul said, I've never been this high in my life before. I was paranoid. And all of a sudden over the loudspeaker, will Mr. Paul V. Hill come into first class, please? He said, I'm busted. And he goes in there, and what the passenger saw was this old guy standing in the aisle with the tube from the oxygen mask trying to show a rope trick. I can't remember is it the Hindu tie or whatever? The guy sitting next to Johnny Thompson said to Paul, I'll go back to your coach seat. Why don't you sit next to your father here and keep him quiet for the rest of the flight?
Yeah.
That's one of many stories, and some of them Johnny told us. Okay.
Well, there's a great documentary. There's a Showtime show. I think it's called, is it The Ballad of the Gambler or The Gambler's Ballad, that is put together by Penn Jillette, that is kind of an inside peek at Johnny Thompson. And if you get a chance, look it up. And I'll post a link to it when I remember what it was called. But I think it's the Gambler's Ballad, I believe is what it's called. But it's kind of a peek, a small little piece of Johnny Thompson.
Well, no, he forgot more magic than most people will ever learn. He was a teacher. He was in vaudeville. He was worked with the mob in Vegas. The stories, it was incredible. And if you ever want to see, I'm sure it's on YouTube, The Great Tonsoni, one of the funniest two-person acts you'll ever see in your life, where he's this Polish prestidigitator, and Pam is this klutzy assistant. The funny thing is,
what does he call her?
It was in Estes Park at the high school.
How does he introduce her as the easiest trick in magic? Isn't he used to say, now the easiest trick in magic, and she'd walk out?
Yeah. Well, Jeff Thompson from Cheyenne was our backstage manager in Estes Park, and he was flipping out because they wanted a rehearsal time because they would get into makeup and everything. And she's standing in the wings ready to go on, and she's just bad-mouthing him, what a jerk this guy is, whatever. And Jeff is going, they're married, they don't get along. Then he realized she was getting into character to go out and be this blonde-headed idiot assistant, which she wasn't, of course. She's a beautiful woman. And she was just getting into character to get ready to walk out on stage and be this, where she'd throw the rings at him and just drop things and didn't care, and he would just give him that look. Then he would produce a dove, and then it would just splat on him and things. Go look up The Great Tonsoni and watch the act. It's probably going to be from 40 years ago, whatever. It's one of the greatest acts you'll ever see. They were great. And as an individual, he could do anything. In magic, in stories, when we first did it up at the Craig's Lodge, we wouldn't let him out of the room. And Eric said, look, we got to let him go back downstairs to talk to the rest of the people. He can't keep just telling 5 of us stories, He was one of the great ones. But Max Maven, who people say give you a hard time, he never gave us a hard time. He was great the 2 times at Magic in the Rockies. But the list goes on and on. There were just a page full of headliners that in Magic are top names. You got to meet them. And Walter Zany Blaney. He was on Johnny Carson. He just passed away. He was on Johnny Carson. He was on Dinah Shore. He was on Merv Griffin. He had the greatest levitation in the world. And he told us a story when he took Johnny backstage and showed him how it was done. And he brought the levitation to Magic in the Rockies once. And Tim had to go down to some FedEx place in Denver and pick it up or whatever, and he performed it. And then another time, he had this special hoop that my dear friend Hudson Grotzinger, who passed away, helped him manufacture. And one time he came and he just brought the hoop to show everyone. It's like a multi-$1,000 hoop that would be passed over to levitation. But he was famous for what Blackstone used to do, the father and the son, the vanishing bird cage. Look him up, Walter Zany Blaney. He was the Texas trickster.
Yep.
He just passed away. There's a whole room with his memorabilia at Copperfield's Museum in Vegas.
So you brought up David Copperfield.
Blaney room.
We're going to talk about David Copperfield. We're kind of going to skip around. You saw David Copperfield before he was David Copperfield. And so kind of tell us this story. You and I've talked about this a couple of times.
Yeah, I got into magic back in '69, early '70s. I belonged to the Society of American Magicians, which I belonged to for over 35 years, and the International Brotherhood of Magicians. I did not belong to a specific club. There was a group in Jersey, Society of American Magicians, holding a public show at Middlesex Vocational High School auditorium. And strangely enough, one of the world's greatest magicians was in town to do a lecture. His name was Di Vernon. He lived to 96. He was a staple at the Magic Castle. He was the professor. And he was sitting in the front row because he was going to do a lecture the following night at a Chinese restaurant in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I went to this show, and it was a sellout. And a 15-year-old was introduced. He's going to be a big star. His name is David Copperfield. And he came out and he did the dancing cane and he did some choreography. And I was sitting in almost the last row in this auditorium. And he produced a dove and it flew off the stage. And the audience, oh! And I looked up and I went like this with my finger. And the dove, I'm not kidding, wanted a place to land. And it flew all the way to the back and we made eye contact and it landed on my finger. And the guy from the SAM ran over, okay, we'll take that. I said, I know you will, calm down, you know. It's like, I never got to meet David, but I saw him subsequently at shows at the Lincoln Center in Fort Collins when the show was small enough, and at the Buell Center in Denver, at the Civic Center in Cheyenne. And whenever I had a chance to talk to him, I'd say, oh yeah, I remember the show, I remember the show. He didn't remember me, but he remembered the show. He's actually David Cotkin from Metuchen, New Jersey. I think his parents owned a department store. And if you look in the credits, it's always Seth Cotkin is working. That's his brother. But you know, he's one of the greatest. You name a name, people will say Houdini, then they'll say David Copperfield. But Magic Live, he would show up for a lecture on stage in the general sessions. Then he would just walk around the dealer room and talk to people. And I've got some pictures of him, and you know, I was able to go up to him and remind him of that show. And I saw him several times after that. He doesn't know me personally, but he remembers the show. He remembers the time.
My friend James and I, a couple of years ago, had a chance. We went down and saw the show and talked with his guy Chris Kenner, and he got us back and we talked. We got a chance, the four of us, to hang out for a little bit, and I got a chance to talk to David Copperfield about Otto and George. And Otto Peterson was his childhood friend, and you know Otto and George, the comedian with the ventriloquist dummy. And so we got a chance to talk to him.
I never knew about it. Yeah, I never knew about it till you told me about him. Then I saw him on YouTube. It's not for everybody.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah, but I got a chance. We got a chance to talk to Copperfield about
ventriloquist.
And it was so much fun to talk to him about something. And you could tell that he was so happy to talk to somebody that didn't want to show him magic tricks or that didn't want to talk about magic. He got to talk about his childhood best friend, Otto Peterson, who had just passed away in the 9 months before. And so here's a plug. If you get a chance, look up if you enjoy if you're an adult and you understand humor, look up Otto and George. But so what are some of the other, we've talked about some of the.
If you're easily offended, do not.
Well, Lou, if they're easily offended, they're not watching this show.
Go ahead.
So they've tuned into me a few times. So we talked about the people you grew up watching and the people that you've met.
I saw you.
Go ahead.
Say again.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead and finish your sentence.
I missed it.
Well,
say it again.
You saw me where? You saw me.
No, I said they're easily offended. I saw your show last week.
Yeah, right.
I saw your interview show last week.
Right.
If they're easily offended.
Yeah. I
No, what was your question?
So we talked about some of the people you've met and some of the people that you've looked up to. Who are the people out there now that are performing that people would have a chance to go see once we can start doing shows? What is in your opinion, I want the good and the bad about the current state of magic. I mean, I know you and I have talked a lot about what is good and what is bad, and what is what works and what doesn't. But what is in your opinion the good and bad?
if it ever starts up again, there's only 2 or 3 doing it right now in the socially distant facilities. If he's back at his lifelong contract at Harrah's, you go see Mac King.
Absolutely.
He used to have a 1 o'clock show and a 3 o'clock show, and it was only like $27 to get in. Mac is a great guy. He's a great magician, and who's calling me? I can't talk to him now. He's a great magician, and he's funny. He was at our first Magic in the Rockies before he was famous. Mike Caveney, a big deal magician, good friend of Eric Meade, said, if you're having a convention, you ought to get this guy before he becomes famous. His name is Mac King. A fantastic magician, very funny guy, very hospitable. He usually runs 2 shows at Harrah's. Right now, he's not doing it. It's worth seeing. And then see him in the hallway afterward. Here's what he's going to say about me.
Yeah, tell him you're a friend of Lou.
Lou from Fort Collins says hello. You're going to go, is that bum? And he came up to me at Magic Live. He said, you know what I tell people? I said, I know, Mag. He goes, I love you, but I know you always call me a bum. He goes, yeah. I said, I know. I tell people ahead of time, you're going to call me a bum. The Mac King show, if it starts again in Vegas, is a great show. For all the stuff on television, whatever, Penn and Teller, you know them. I know them. They don't know me as well as, Penn and Teller show is a great show. It's expensive. It's worth seeing. They at one time were the bad boys in Magic. Nobody liked them because they exposed, they did this, they that. Is that my internet connection is unstable or yours? Doesn't matter. Okay, we'll keep going. Penn and Teller shows it's a great show. It's one of the more expensive shows. If Copperfield, he only mostly plays Vegas now. There's some pro and con. I haven't seen his new show with the robot, the alien. Yeah, some people like it. Some magicians don't think it's the old Copperfield anymore. I can't, so I don't want to tell people. If they're enamored, they should go see him. But Penn and Teller's a great show, a little more expensive. Mac King, if it starts up in Vegas again, is a great show. Locally, it's mostly Denver. There are magicians performing. I'll share something with you that a friend of mine, we talked about magicians doing Zoom magic, which I don't. I might show you a trick on Zoom, but I don't do a Zoom show. And there was some discussion on his Facebook page, and his theory is even mediocre magicians can do well doing Zoom shows because of the smaller format. You're not standing up in front of an audience. And also you can get away with stuff outside the frame. It's almost like trick photography. And I would like to talk about that to the several magic clubs I belong to. We meet by Zoom now, and I would tell people, if you're offended by that statement, then you must be a mediocre magician.
Well, far be it from me to criticize magicians. Far be it from me to ever say anything bad about magicians.
Well, here's the deal. Everybody is so upset usually about, it used to be the masked magician that exposed magic on television. And there were a couple different masked magicians, and we know who they were. And now it's on YouTube.
Yep.
My friend Cody has done walk around, and he's done a trick where someone comes up to him and says, oh, look, this is how you did the trick. It's on YouTube. Some people get a kick out of exposing magic. There's a guy that has very highly produced stuff from Penn and Teller. This is how so-and-so did so-and-so on Penn and Teller. Exposure, okay, that's what they're into. But the biggest exposers of magic are magicians that don't practice their craft.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm not out to fool people with my tricks. Did you enjoy the show? Was it entertaining? Did we have a good time? The other magicians that I have trouble with are the in-your-face ones. Is the thing over there? You're wrong. Well, you know where it is. Why are you yelling at me? There are a lot of folks that once they learn magic, let me take away a lot. Some people, there's a period of time, and some of them never get over it, where it inflates their ego. I can do something you can't. That's not magic. They're all tricks. You know, you can buy the trick if you want. You can learn it. It's not magic. It's entertainment. Whether I'm one person or I'm doing walk around, which I'll only do if there's another magician I know doing it with me, so we can drive there together, or stand-up shows, which I like to do, whether it's in a parlor, or it's in a restaurant, or even on stage in the small format like the Lincoln Center, the Union Colony Civic Center, Cheyenne Civic Center. Those are my venues that I like. And was it entertaining? Did you enjoy yourself? Did I, you know, some people want to be fooled. Some other people get really upset. You think you're smarter than me. Then I have to say to them, well, the more intelligent a person is, the easier they are to fool. I don't know if that's true or not, but that shuts them up, okay? You know, they're good magicians in Colorado. There's Doc Eason. The tower closed a while ago. It's no longer in Snowmass. He's a great bar magician. He's a great magician in general. Eric Meade, one of my closest friends. There's Joe Given and Carol Massey. They're struggling right now with Theater of Dreams in Castle Rock. They try to prevent pandemic prevented it. Live magic shows, they're bringing some great magicians. They're great magicians in their own right. There's some very good magicians in Denver, some very good magicians in our club. Not all of them are doing it as full time. So, you know, you got to pick and choose, especially if it's a Zoom show you have to pay for, or if it's somewhere that opens up a venue again, you know, check the reviews, especially if it's Vegas where some of the shows are $100. If you go to Penn and Teller, it's well spent. Xavier Mortimer is another guy in Vegas. He's very good. He's a magician, juggler, mime. I think he's Planet Hollywood. I'm not sure. He has a theater there. He's not as expensive if he's still doing shows. Right now, most of them are dark. They're not doing shows. Alon New is doing a mental show every night. You can't go out into the audience.
I think the market's there. You know,
It's going to be a new normal.
I did 2 shows on Valentine's Day in New Orleans, and we had to limit them to 12 people because of you know, how small the venue was. And we priced the tickets at $100, and we sold 2 shows in a matter of hours. So I think the need is there. And I think once things start opening up, people are going to really, but we as performers have to adapt to that. You know, I don't know how much I'm going to be going into the crowd. And I did a show in Wilson, Kansas, in August, just because it was on a road trip when I was on a 3-week little road trip. And a woman comes up, I invite a woman up on stage. And the first thing I did is I put my hand out to shake her hand. And she kind of, and it dawned on me that's not, we can't do that anymore. So of course I make a joke out of it. And I said, you know, usually I apologize. I said, usually there's, at this point in the show, there's some handshaking, a lot of hugging, and more often than not, some open mouth kissing. And I said, if this is a good audience, then I'll let the handshaking and the hugging go. But if you're a good audience, after the show, we'll get back to the open mouth kissing. And they loved it. But it was, but we have to look at that. You know, how many times are we going to be able to bring people up and hand items around? So I think there's going to be a new way of what we do.
There's going to be a new normal. I do an effect where I put a stock on the woman's neck and I end up sticking a sword through it. I don't know if she'll want to let me do that anymore. Here, pick a card. No, thank you. Here, take this Sharpie and sign the card. No, thank you. There's an effect that people do. You don't hand it out at the end where the signed folded cards comes out of your mouth. I don't do that. Here, you want that? No. I do an effect with the cut and restored rope where at one point I hand them the scissors. I don't know. Will that work? Maybe I'll need to have non-latex gloves in a box to give people. Well, also, I recently I'm 3 weeks out of.
Go ahead. I say our friend Aiden Sinclair is doing shows at Stanley.
No,
Aiden is doing shows at the Stanley, and he's wearing a mask, and he requires everybody in the audience to wear a mask. He's got everybody separated by groups that they bought tickets with, and he's doing well with them. He's selling really well, but he's also following very strict rules. And he's got the hand wipes and he's got hand sanitizer. And before you come up, he asks, hey, just you know, and it's slowing down, but that's not necessarily bad either.
I'll
But
try. Yeah, I'll try getting them to wear masks if you're doing a show in Wyoming.
right,
Not
right,
going to happen. Okay.
right.
They're not, you know, I mean, it's just not. Okay. And some people, it's a political thing. You know, I understand it. I don't buy into it, but you know, I'm 3 weeks out of my second shot, you know, doesn't mean I'm immune, but according to the doctor on MSNBC, if I get it, I won't die and they won't put me on a ventilator. Okay, good. That's a good thing. But it's a new normal, you know, audience interactions, pick a card, do this, do that. You know, if I'm there in a small venue and even there's a stage, I'm going to be in front of the stage where I can walk out and touch the audience. But they may not want to be touched. They may not want to come up on stage. So it's, you know, some of the effects I do may have to be altered or chucked because the audience will not buy into it. Or I might not buy into it, you know. It's just we'll have to wait to see what the new normal is. I know there's one guy in Denver. He said, I'm doing shows. Okay, you know, take your chances. I just I'm waiting for live shows. I want to do live shows again. Like one of the magicians I know, you know, Mark Strivings, one Zoom meeting, he said, maybe I'm retired and I don't know it.
Yeah.
You know, it's entertainment. We also, no matter how high tech the world gets, no matter how bright the 10-year-olds are compared to me with the phone and everything else, magic has that appeal. Not just how did you do it, it's creating awe and wonder. And laughs, and what you're doing, and I've gotten into more lately, is mentalism and mental magic, and that causes people to go. There's no applause. It's like, how could he know? How could he know? You know, for 7 years, the year before I retired, and 6 years more. Just by accident, a teacher at Poudre High School called me once and said, you're the assistant director of the Workforce Center. Could you come in and talk about careers? I said, yeah, that'll be boring as shit. I don't know if I'm going to do that. Let me put something together. It turned out to be an hour and 15-minute individual classes where I talked about terms like what's a vocation? What's an avocation? In 10 minutes into it, I talked about, well, some people, you might one day have, you might not, you know, Confucius said, if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. Tell me what that means. And be interactive with the kids. And in high school, it's interesting. And I'd walk in there, and I finally stopped it in August of 2019, because I was doing like 3 high schools a week. And it wasn't a chore. I talked to thousands of kids, and I really, they talked about stuff I knew from the Workforce Center for years. But I had to cloak it to keep their interest. So about 10 minutes into it, I would do your favorite trick that I do with the catch a bottle.
That's the best.
Which is, you know, drawing them in. They go, oh, he said this was going to, oh, he said this is going to be fun. It is going to be fun. And I do several other effects during the course of the thing. And one that was a book test where I never told them I use your line. I didn't read their mind. It was remote viewing. And I said, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want. So there were metaphors there. And I was able to hone those effects with the high school kids. And I bumped into some of them around town. Hey, I'm working. You came into our class. You're one of the best speakers we ever had. And the teachers would say, oh, you're the best one. I said, listen, you're here 5 days a week. I can waltz in, do an hour and 15 with 4 or 5 magic tricks involved, keep their interest. You're the hero, not me. You're here 5 days a week, okay? Don't ever forget it. Because early in my life, I substitute taught in Newark. Don't talk to me about teaching, you know. But I was happy talking to the kids and doing magic and working on stuff. And it kept their interest. It kept their interest, so they probably remembered more of the other stuff I was talking about. But You know, Copperfield did that years ago with Project Magic. He would teach physical therapists how to help people with eye-hand coordination that had had some type of accident where they lost that eye hand. Simple tricks people could do. It's you know, it's a great hobby if you can get over performing. You know, that's the funny thing about magic, and you know it and I know it. If I said to you, I'm a stand-up comedian, where do you perform? Well, I don't perform anywhere, but I know a lot of jokes. I'm a violinist. Oh, where do you play? Well, I don't play, but I own a violin. I'm a magician. Why? Because I bought the props. And I have a card that says I'm a magician and I do balloon animals. And for all occasions. Excuse me? You own the props, so you can claim that you are. And there was a movie years ago, a guy said to the other actor, I'm a writer. He said, you're not a writer if you call yourself a writer, till other people call you a writer. So you're asking me about where magic is? It's great for some people. For other people, unfortunately, it's a crutch. I know something you don't. And I can inflate my ego. I've had people say, you can really read my mind? No, I can't. Calm down. It's an illusion. It's a magic trick. Well, you know, there used to be a book, How to Pick Up Girls with Magic. Great. It's like, there was. I don't think he said women. It said how to pick up girls with magic.
Well, I know several of us that could write one on how to lose.
That's someone I would go out.
Right. So you said you've got something. You've got something to perform. Also, we're at about an hour and 20, so we'll go another 15 or 20 minutes for you. And but if you guys have any questions for Lou, type them in the comments. And Lou, I'll let you set up, and then I got a little bit of preaching to do to you. So if you want to go ahead and kind of show us something that you said you got prepared.
I'm set up. I'm just going to probably. Yeah. Am I spotlighted then, or what?
You're
what do they call it? Spotlighting, or you? Because I see you and me.
Let me see if I can make it.
Okay, because I'm gonna look what it looks like to myself.
It's gonna transfer just to you.
Well, I'll just go.
No, don't touch anything. It'll happen.
When I talk, it'll go to me.
Yep, it's just you. Yes. I'll shut up and it'll go right back to you. Okay, I'm done. I'm gonna mute my. Nope, you're good.
I only see you. All right, I'll go back to gallery view because I can do it here. This is what, and I'll have to stand up and be lost on part of this. My camera is fixed. I think at my age, so am I. So excuse me for not having a head in this frame, all right? That's the problem with Zoom Magic. Magic is optical illusion, and I can prove that with these ropes, okay? And I'll try to stay in frame. We're going to use a small piece of rope, medium piece of rope, and a very long piece of rope. Optical illusion means if you fool the eye, you fool the mind. It's sometimes easy with some people. The illusion I hope to create is that all three ropes are the same length. Now, one way I can perpetrate this hoax is by hiding the bottoms. I'll let you know a secret. We magicians don't call this hiding, we call it palming. It fits in the palm of my hand. If you look only at the tips of the ropes, they look equal. Unless my hand slips, then you see the bottom of the short one, the bottom of the medium one, the bottom of the real long one. Not much of an optical illusion. So to enhance this optical illusion, I'm going to curl up the bottoms to meet the tops. What looks like a short piece of rope, what looks like a medium piece of rope, what looks like a very long piece of rope. Now, if you look only at the six tips and not the middle, well, if you look at the middles, you know we started with the short piece, the medium piece, and a long piece. A little stretching and a little magic, it starts to look more and more and more like 1, 2, 3 equal lengths of rope. That's 1, 2, sloppily 3 equal lengths of rope. When you go home and perform this, I know some of you will, people will ask you the silliest questions. Which is your favorite equal length of rope? When they ask you that question, be sure to tell them it's not the little one. Be sure to tell them it's not the medium one. If you tell them it's this real long one, they'll never figure it out.
Very nice. I love that one. I love that.
I don't know how that comes over on Zoom.
That's great. It was great.
Yeah, there's a move in there I knew a guy when I was at Mecca Magic years ago, and I just saw his face on Penn and Teller the other night when who's the guy who stayed on too long at the Magic and the Rockies from Philadelphia?
Chris Capehart.
Black Chris Capehart was on, and he fooled Penn and Teller. But in the working up to before he did his act, he said when he was growing up, he didn't know there were any black magicians. And he walked by this poster and he said, then I found out there was a guy named Presto, Earl Johnson. I knew him as Everett Johnson, Presto the magician. And he came to the Mecca Magic Club in East Orange. He also worked the back room at Tannen's, and Myron and I knew him, and he used to teach us stuff. Before there were the Al Goshman sponge balls, Presto would make them with a cuticle scissor, and he gave us some sponge balls he made. He also, for a while, worked at Hubert's Flea Circus in New York, which was downstairs from all the pinball machines. And he was a great magician. He ended up, I think, homeless and whatever. But Presto, the effect I just showed you, I teach it to people, but I teach it differently. Because there was a move there that Presto taught me. And when I was watching Penn and Teller 2 weeks ago, Capehart walked by the sign, I said, there's Presto. I knew him. He was, when he worked at Hubert's Flea Circus in the basement, he did magic with lit cigarettes. No one does cigarette magic anymore. He did all sorts of stuff. And he worked with the wild man from Borneo, who was a guy in a cage that looked like he was wild. There's a trick called tonguing a cigarette, where it looks like you swallow it and then smoke comes out of your mouth and the lit cigarette comes out later on. He said, yeah, I do that trick now. I said, Presto. He said, the wild man wanted to teach it to me for $50. I said, did he teach it to you? He goes, I wasn't gonna give him $50. I taught it to myself. I said to him, how'd you do? He said, I burned the shit out of my mouth. That was Presto. He's on YouTube somewhere. Presto the magician. You'll see, because he has a rubber dove tied behind his back on a string.
Speaking of that, I just posted a video for YouTube that is a show that you did for Fort Collins Public Media. I was lucky enough. My buddy Bill and I were in the audience, and it so people can see a show.
Thanks to you. But thanks to you, I did that show, because I didn't even know we had that cable station in Fort Collins. And you called me and said, I'm going to be on this cable show. Why don't you call them? I said, what are you talking about? It's at the old museum in the basement. I said, I live in Fort Collins. I know nothing about it. And I went down and met Alexis, and she said, oh, we'd love to have you do a show. We won't pay you, but it'll be an audience with a 3-camera shoot, and you get the copy of the video. I went, wow. And it came off pretty well. It came off so well, in fact, that it's on YouTube. It's about 45 minutes. It's a full show. It's from 2019. I'm a lot younger. And the funny thing is, a couple of months after the video came out, a friend I used to work with the unions passed away, and I went to his funeral at one of the Unitarian church, and his daughter, who I'd never met, had a big screen on the podium, and they showed slides of him all through his life. I only knew him later in life. We used to go to lunch. And I thought, oh, okay, retrospective of his life. And I came home and said to my wife, Meredith, I said, when I go, I want you to show that video at my funeral. And if anyone walks out during the rope trick, tell them I'll come back and haunt them. But it's, it's an old guy doing magic. And I look at it and I go, who is that old guy doing magic, But yeah, but thanks to you, I was able to do that show, and I got a copy of it for as long as it lasts on YouTube. And it was great shooting of the cameras and editing, and had a live audience, and it was a lot of fun. And it's sort of who I was the last time I did any. If I had to do a show tomorrow, having not done it, the 3-rope thing, well, I call it the professor's nightmare. People call it my favorite rope trick. It's not, I don't call it it's the name of it. If I had to do a full show tomorrow, I'd have to look at that video for all the lines and all the nuances that I haven't picked up in a year. Not just doing the tricks, but what comes out of my mouth. I wouldn't, I'd have to look at the video to go, oh yeah, there's the line there. There's the line there for misdirection. There's when I look over here, when the person comes up, they're standing over here. I've been
That's funny. That's funny that you say that,
pandemic
because
for,
I did these shows in New Orleans last week on Valentine's Day, and a woman was in my audience that is a friend. She's actually my partner in the restaurant, and she came at the in between. I did two shows, and she said in between, she goes, you missed a line. One of the funniest lines in your show, you didn't say it. And I had been out of practice. I hadn't done a show since last August. And and she said, that's my favorite part of that story is when you, that line, it's so funny. And Lou, I just forgot. I just thought I could just walk through it. So.
and the worst thing is if it's a callback. Later on, you call it back and they go, what is he talking about? Because you didn't set it up for the callback. Anything, even though it's muscle memory, when I was doing it more frequently, especially with the high school kids, several times a week, I wasn't doing my full show, but I was in sync. And now it's like, gee, it happened to me a couple of years ago at the first night. I do a different rope trick, and I was emceeing the rest of the people who were performing at first night. And I realized I forgot something in the trick that I've been doing for 40 years. And the next day was New Year's Day, and I went home and I panicked. I said, "Is this how it ends? This is it? I'm just going to forget how to do this?" And I struggled most of the day, New Year's Day. Then I said, "Stop thinking about it. Work with muscle memory." And it came back, but then I lost it again. But then it came back, and I realized that can happen. I know people that, my friend Hudson, many years before he passed away, I don't do any shows anymore. Why not, Hudson? Your droll sense of humor, very funny. I just can't do it anymore. But it's going to happen. But I would like to do some more live shows. It's just a question. I'm working on some new routines too, even though the stuff I'm working on would demand an audience.
Well, and to add on to the one more last thing about this Fort Collins public, one more thing about this Fort Collins public TV show is it was so successful that I was episode 1 and you were episode 2, and then they didn't do anymore. So I think did we curse it, or was it so good with our 2 that they couldn't follow it up? I'm going to go with that. So, guys, if you have any questions, Lou, did you have something else?
I maybe the city. No, it's I didn't know we could go this long with me talking this much. I thought it would, when you said it might be 90 minutes, I said, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about?
Well, we're at 90, and I've still got a
good
couple things I want to talk about. So if you got a few more minutes, I just want to, if anybody has any questions, now's the time. We're going to wrap it up here pretty quick.
I've got my sugar-free lemonade here, and I am working on some new routines. I'll just show you something I'm going to use as a prop.
Please.
I can't talk about it yet, and it's not going to be. It's going to be this guy here, Danny O'Day doll, and I think they're spooky. And I'm not going to do ventriloquism, but in fact, as I mentioned to you before the show started, before I was 10 years old plus and got into magic, when I was in my 4 or 5 or 6 year old body, my parents bought me a Jerry Mahoney doll, a toy ventriloquist dummy. And my mother, may she rest in peace, along with my father, didn't like the suit that it came in. It was a cheap suit. So she cut up one of my father's suits and made an actual brown suit for the dummy. And eventually the mouth broke on it, and like an idiot kid, I threw it away. So I was thinking of some ideas that are spooky with what you and I know as PK Touch, with a doll. And I just was on eBay looking for a Jerry Mahoney doll. In bad shape, they're priced through the roof. But I picked up this Danny O'Day, Jimmy Nelson, Danny O'Day, and he's going to be doing something when I get back to live performing. It has nothing to do with ventriloquism, because I don't do ventriloquism. So I've got some ideas. As my friend Myron says, you're just another senior martyr. You come up with these routines that you may never do, but that's to be seen.
You know what? We all do that.
Always working on some idea. And
I've got stacks of note cards of shit that I'll never perform that I thought was the next best thing. You know, I had a chance to talk to, and I actually became friends with it.
Well, the only,
Oh,
who?
I was going to say that, you know, I got to be.
Who did you talk to?
I got to be very friendly with Larry Becker, as you know, who is one of the I think one of the geniuses, and he told me that he has hundreds of notebooks of things that he never got past the notebooks, that he would go with his wife and all their friends on trips, and he didn't get along well with his wife's friends' husbands, so he just would sit in a bar or sit on the beach or sit in a lounge and just write. And so I've got stacks of note cards of stuff that I eventually, and every once in a while I'll remember something and I'll pull it out, and it becomes something real. So
I bought an effect that was like $50 that I'll never do. And because of it, I bought this really weird sport jacket for $100, which I'll never wear. And I'll never wear it to do this trick. So it's like, oh, I had this great idea. It's this really stupid looking sport jacket, XXX. I got it. And then I never did it. And then it's like, because when I perform, I don't wear a jacket. And I'm often in a Hawaiian shirt with short sleeves where people go, well, I guess he didn't go up his sleeve, you know. And Doug Henning from all those days back when he did the Broadway show called The Magic Show, took us out of tuxedos and he wore tie-dyes. And I just, you know, don't perform with a sport jacket or a suit anymore, which doesn't allow me to do corporate stuff, but that's not the point. So, you know, I bought things with a prop, and then I bought things for the prop, and I never did the effect anyway. The only way, though, any new effect I add, doesn't matter how much I like it, what it cost, what it didn't cost. If after several performances, the audience doesn't like it, it's on the shelf. It's on the shelf. I tried to do a magic square once at my wife's older daughter's wedding. That was before her daughter's divorce. And back out in Oregon, it did well. And there was a holiday party in town, Meredith and I went to, and I tried this magic square effect. I'm not going to describe it. You know what it is. And on the ride home, Meredith said, "That's the most convoluted, boring effect you've ever done. Don't ever do it again." I went, okay. It's out of the act. I didn't have the pacing for it. It's gone. So, you know, we you know, Bob Fitch, a great Broadway guy who had workshops that Bob Sheets went to, whatever. You know, was a guy in one of those workshops, and he said, "Oh, what are your effects?" He said, "I do the chair levitation, where she sits on a chair, she levitates." "Why do you do it?" "Well, it cost me $5,000. "But how does it fit into your act? Why do you do it?" "Well, it cost me $5,000. By the end of the workshop, the 3-day workshop, the guy owned the prop, but he wasn't doing it in his act. You know, I have plenty of props like that. We're going to go through them in the basement with my wife and probably send some out to Hocus Pocus to Paul Gross to get rid of, because I'm a junk collector now. And my act that I take to a show is packed pretty compactly. Some of the props I have, I'll never take out. I may show them at a magic club if we ever have magic clubs that are live again. But they were just for my own edification. And some of the things I reacquired were things I had as a kid that cost $4 then, now cost $200 to reacquire. They're just props, and my wife has them in the great room up on the mantle. She said, "If you're going to keep them in the basement," and she gets up on the 20-foot ladder, I don't, puts them up there. It's like, okay. It's a great hobby for me. It's been a great hobby. It's been great fun performing. But I go back to that holding the business card that says magician, because you own the props. When I was a kid, there was Grant Magic. It's now called Mac Magic. And we'd be at the club meeting, and an 8-year-old would go, "Well, these tubes on my last trip to China," and like, you're 8 years old. Nowadays, that's possible. The parents send them in the summer to China, right? And a kid would do something and go, "That's your pattern on your trip to China? You're a little pisher. What are you talking about?" In fact, one of the unsolicited testimonials I had was before Copperfield was big. And I was getting back into magic with my former girlfriend, who I moved out here now. We're very close friends, Marcia. She was going to be a teacher. She decided not to be. She ended up working for doctors out here and she and her husband are happily married. I wouldn't have moved out here if it wasn't for Marcia. She was practice teaching in Maplewood, New Jersey. Would you come and do a magic show for the kids in the class? I said, sure. This is pre-77 when I moved out to Colorado. And they were like 6-year-olds. And I do the show, and this 6-year-old stood up. If he had a cigar, he would have been his father. It was a very Jewish neighborhood, I could tell. A kid that stands up at the end of the show, and he says, I've seen magicians before, but this guy's the greatest. And I'm looking at this 3-foot person going, who have you seen? You're seeing. I'd like to track him down now. Well, you know, there was no David Copperfield. Who have you seen? I've seen magicians. This guy's the greatest. I stood there with my mouth open going, that little picture, you know. But, you know, we have fun doing it. You perform. Why do you perform? We have fun sharing that with people.
I read most of the shows I do. I read the first to open up. I read out of the book Boy's Life by Robert McCammon about what it was like to believe in magic, you know, and what it was like but as you got older, it gets churched out of you, spanked out of you, brushed out of you, bathed out of you, schooled out of you, and you're told to act your age, and you're told to, you know, and I want my audience to remember, you know, my show has, I mean, you've seen the evolution of it probably better than anybody. You and my buddy Bill have probably seen the evolution since the beginning, that it's more become, it's an autobiographical story that I tell about being a kid, an imaginary friend, and then you're a part of the show, and my grandma and the circuses she took me to, you know, it's become. And I just want people to walk away from the show thinking about their imaginary friends, and thinking about the magic that they saw and that they missed in their life because they had told to act, you know, act like a grown-up. Well, I'm the worst example of a fucking grown-up in the world, right? I mean, but I'm cleverly disguised. But that's why I do it. I do it to share that it's too bad that I've rediscovered this in my, you know, I rediscovered this in my later in life. But maybe that timing was perfect. Maybe that timing was perfect. So that's why I do it.
Oh, and when I went to see Copperfield at the Union Colony Civic Center years ago, he did the fact, someone said to me, well, you're a magician. You know how he did it, don't you? I said, no, I have no idea. I'm still fooled. And if I'm not, I'm impressed by the technique, the showmanship, whatever. Yeah. You know, I got to see Lance Burton in Vegas. I took a bunch of friends there against their will. After the show, they went, thank you for taking us. There were like 25 of us. One of the greatest magicians in the world at his time, Lance Burton. You know, go see Matt King if he starts his show up again in Vegas, and have him call me a bum in the lobby.
And I'm a witness.
Oh, Lou, that bum.
And I win.
Great show.
I win with Jeff Montel, and he said, "Oh, Lou, that bum." Yep.
It's cheap compared to shows. Yeah, compared to Vegas, it's an inexpensive show. You know, he used to comp me and my friends. He said, but make sure you tip the person that takes you to their seat. So we give that guy $20, you know. But no, and he's a great magician aside from being funny. And his last bit with the beer, he'll kill you.
Yep.
And was this the beer you ordered? And the guy's like, how could you know?
Well, we're going to wrap up real quick.
No, it's a great hobby for some people.
We went a little bit over the time I promised you, so we'll let you get back to it. But I do want to say a few minutes and say that I tell this often to other people, and I don't know that I've ever gotten a chance to tell you directly. I owe so much of my successes and so much of the drive to keep going and my motivation and my creativity. I owe so much of what the mystery collection has become to you. I mean, there's a few people, but you are definitely on the Mount Rushmore of the mystery collection. The lunches, and I hope we can get back to having lunches where we would just kind of talk and beat things up, and the meetings where we would sit in the back room and laugh at Chinese Coke bottles and talk about why things worked and didn't work, and all the way to the weird lunch about Yehudi, which we'll talk about that maybe at another day on TV. But Lou, I cannot thank you enough for your friendship.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem I had at your last show at that place in Greeley. Here's the problem I had with it. I'm sitting there enjoying it, and someone came up to me and said, "Oh, are you his dad?" No, Paul's a friend of mine. Oh, you're not his father? No, I'm not his father. It's like, no.
Well, Lou, I would be lucky.
Thanks for the compliment.
I would be
guess.
lucky to have you as a father. I would be lucky if you were. So you are a great friend, and I appreciate everything you've done for me, for Magic, and really, there are a small handful of people that I would not be where I am today without their help, and you are on the Mount Rushmore. So I can't thank you enough for your time, especially for today. And I can't wait till you get your 3 weeks so you can get that shot, so we can meet back for Greek food over in Loveland.
Oh, I'm done. It's been 3 weeks. I'm done.
Oh, you had it. Okay,
I'm a double shot, and it's been 3 weeks ago.
I'll call you this next week.
Oh yeah, I'm sterile.
Okay, all right. So you're out to handshake, hugs, and
okay,
open mouth kisses. It's back to the old great Loudini. So, all right.
Only with Meredith.
Oh, perfect. Well, and also I got to tell you, Meredith gave me one of the best compliments I've ever had at a show when she came to the dinner show I did, because she's seen a lot of Magic and she thought my show was pretty good. And
she thought you. Well, the compliment was she was disappointed to find out that all your patter was bullshit. She goes, "Those stories aren't real." I said, "Well, some of them are real." She goes, "Oh my gosh, he had me so enthralled. I thought they were all real." I said, "He's a magician."
Right. So, well, on that, Lou, thank you so much. I'm gonna, I posted the link to the Fort Collins Underground show. It's on the comments on YouTube. Check Lou out. And you have a website, is that right? The Great Loudini?
TheGreatLoudini.com. And if it's a dentist in Minnesota, it's not me. Or if it's a psychic in Denver, yeah, it's TheGreatLoudini.com. Thanks to Andy Polson and GoDaddy, I have a website.
Yep, I just posted it. And
some of the stuff is old because I'm not really doing that school stuff anymore.
Okay. All right, Lou, have a great Sunday.
My friend Andy.
Have a great Sunday. Give Meredith a hug, and we will.
Thanks for asking me to be on your show.
We will have you. We'll get together for some lunch soon. Next week, real quick. Next week is Lothar Malberg. He's a magician from Canada who is also a Christian minister, and we're going to talk about the role of faith and religion in paranormal and specifically in seance magic and spooky magic. After that, March 21st is Sandy Johnson, who was Judith Myers in the original Halloween, and also in the 1978 movie Halloween. She was the first person to be killed by Michael Myers. She was also the 1974 Playmate of the Year. And then in April 11th, I just did this one. I've got Father Sebastian. You may know he's the guy for vampires. I just talked with him, so we're going to have more details about him later. And then we'll have some other ones coming up. I'll announce them in the next week. So, all right, thanks everybody. Lou, I love you, buddy. Thank you so much. Take care. Listen to Bill Hicks.
My pleasure. Thank you.